Okay, well, great to be here. Thank you very much. And I just want to share with you in the time that we have really a famous Orach Chaim. The Orach Chaim was one of the great commentaries on Chumash, lived about 300, 400 years ago. And he said something very, very pertinent because after all we're winding down. We're getting down to the final stretch before Shavuos. And as we know, as the Bali Musar told us, that really Shavuos is really an amazing time. In fact, so special is Shavuos that it really can't be looked upon as an independent holiday. It is actually, according to sort of the mystical approach and view of these times, Pesach, in a sense, was the beginning of the holiday. The 49 days in between represents Chol HaMoed, similar to what we have when it comes to Sukkot and Pesach. We have that sort of intermediate days. Then you have Shavuos, which is a culmination of this process that started on Pesach. And really, it's hard for us because we're living in a very modern world, and there's certainly a lot of distraction. So it's very hard for us to sort of get into a day-by-day progression of spirituality, which is really the way things were back in the older days. Even in the times of the Bali Musar in the 1800s, they say in the Musar yeshivas that the 49 days of the Omer, of the counting of the Omer, which is the 49 days between Passover and Shavuos, this particular holiday, which is coming right up, that there are 48 ways of acquiring Torah. The 48 ways that are discussed in our sages about what different elements of effort we have to put in to acquire Torah. And every single day of the countdown to Shavuos, they would take a different quality of those 48 ways, and on the 49th day they would actually go over them and really sort of just it would culminate in a review and a total immersion in those 48 concepts. So this is not simple times that we're dealing with. Now again, I guess it was maybe easier back in days when you didn't have phones and social media as a distraction, but at least a little bit we have to try. A little bit we have to recognize that we're just not in regular times. We are getting ready for the most eventful day in the history of mankind. In the year 2448, which is well over 3,000 years ago, but in the year 2448 there was an event. That event changed the nature of human history. That event was God revealing His code of life, the essence of our creation, why He put us into this world was revealed to a mass group of people, of some 3 million people, and there was no doubt about it. The heavens opened up, and Och Hashem Elokecha was said. The words that I am your God, and you shall have no other God in front of me. The whole Jewish people heard it. So what we're moving towards is a time of the ultimate closeness between us and God. When you look at divine revelation, where God literally revealed Himself in a way that He will never do again. We don't know about Mashiach's time, maybe, but probably not. The Ramban Nachmani is very clear that this is an event that really was a once in a human history event, and just like the going out of Egypt was a once in a lifetime event, once in a all of history event, and our job is to sort of tap into that power, tap into that spirituality. What is the message of what's going on here? And the Orach Chaim gives us a little bit of a quick synopsis of the 3 elements that we have to think about. And maybe even more specifically, he says the 3 elements that needed to exist for the Jewish people to receive the Torah. Okay, because, again, there's a beautiful history, and it starts with Avraham Avinu. It goes, of course, to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, to Moshe Rabbeinu, the slavery, of course, in Egypt, the going out, which we celebrated Pesach some 6 weeks ago. And now we're getting ready for the culmination of that Exodus, which was the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. For that to have happened, the Jewish people needed to develop a certain level of greatness in 3 particular areas. That's what the Orach Chaim says, the famous Orach Chaim. Everyone calls him Orach Chaim HaKadosh. He was a very, very holy man. And I'm going to read you the pasuk, and I'm going to break up the pasuk the way he does, and spend a little bit of time in the time that we have tonight, sort of breaking those 3 areas up and just focusing a little bit on each one of them, And really, it gives us a glimpse into something very, very important. Because, we're all on different, we're all growing, hopefully. We're all in a position of trying to, every single day, greater appreciate what we have. As Jews, a system that no one else can even grasp. There's so much we can talk about how each mitzvah is so unique in its own right, how the relationship that we have with God, even in the mitzvos, even in the commandments that are universal in principle, we have them so differently. It's not universal at all. I mean, I'll give you one quick example. It says thou shalt not kill. Now, that's universal. Who doesn't buy into that shalt not kill? It's one of the 10 commandments, right? So we all know, we all accept it. But is it the same for us as it is for the Gentile world? Is it the same commandment? The answer is not. And we can do this for all of them, but this is not the focus of what I want to talk about tonight. But just because I think if we can leave tonight just with the sense that what we have is so unbelievably different and special, and that really it's very hard for us to even appreciate it, and that we can spend 10 lifetimes trying to just look at the uniqueness and specialness of the Torah, and we'd never be done. And that's what we have, and that's what we're celebrating, that's what we're counting down, that incredible event where we received not just a book, not just a sefer, but a whole system, a way of living, and a way of relationship and relating to God in a way that it's so unique. So let me just, that one example, thou shalt not kill. Well, yeah, thou shalt not kill. Don't take another person's life. When you ask a Jew, what is the deeper meaning of thou shalt not kill? Well, when you embarrass somebody, it's like you're killing them. Now, that's not something that you're going to really, be able to relate to in the secular world, in the outside world. Maybe they'll say it's not nice, but I hate to say it, almost the entire political arena is almost predicated on embarrassing somebody. That seems to be the whole way we operate. This one's destroying that one in public, this one's making fun of this one, this is making, and it's just, whatever it is, whatever you feel like, just let the other person, put him through the ground, make fun of him, and everyone has a good laugh, and that's all okay. From the Jewish point of view, that's murder. You just killed somebody. You made somebody's face turn white, and that is it's unthinkable. That is what we received. We received a system of such underlying depth and beauty that really, like I said, to sort of unravel all the layers would take many lifetimes. So all of these three elements that I'm about to share with you underscore that point, that when you talk about learning Torah, incorporating Torah, living Torah, there are different elements that really defy comprehension. The pasuk that the Aruch Chaim says is the essence of what the Jewish people needed to achieve in order to receive the Torah was the pasuk of Vayisum Refidim. It's in Perek Yutes pasuk Beis. Vayisum Refidim. The Jews traveled away from Refidim. Vayavo Midbar Sinai. Vayachnu Bamidbar. They came to Midbar Sinai and they encamped in the desert, which is the desert of Sinai. Vayichan Shom Yisrael Neged Ahar. And the Jewish people encamped there by the foot of the mountain. Okay? Seems like a simple pasuk. You can read it 1,000 times and never know you read anything special. The Aruch Chaim brings this pasuk to life, and sort of just every part of it sort of explodes in front of you in just incredible beauty. Number one, Vayisum Refidim. They left from Refidim. Refidim technically is the name of a place. That's where they were before. That's where Amalek, if you go back to Parshas Beshalach, right, but the parsha before, Amalek attacked the Jewish people. The Jewish people were victorious, but there was an attack. They were susceptible, and they ended up, Baruch Hashem, winning the war. Refidim has a specific connotation. The word Refidim implies rifyon, weakness. They weren't intense. They weren't passionate. It's okay, we have the Torah, and a lot of people have this mentality. Well, what do you want from me? I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I get up in the morning, I go to say my prayers, I put on my tefillin, I do my mitzvahs, I do kibbut aveim, I respect my parents, I put the mezuzah on the doorpost. I'm a good Jew. What do you want from me? Well, it's not about what we want from you, it's what God wants from us. He'd like to have some emotion. He'd like to have some passion. He'd like to actually believe that you appreciate what it is that you're doing and live it with a sense of focus and purpose that literally uplifts your entire life. Because that's the way it should be. That's really what it is. I mean, we can say, we love our spouse. We can say that we're in a great relationship. But if there's no passion in that relationship, if every single time we see the person that, that wants our feedback and our positive reinforcement and our connection, all we're there is sort of like, hi, how you doing? No, that's not going to cut it. I mean, hello, where are you? Be present, be with me. Come on, this is life we're living. We're sharing together. This is we love each other. So, Vayisram Mefidim, the reason why the Jews were susceptible is because we were lacking focus in our Torah study. We were lacking focus in our religious commitment, and God does not tolerate that. That's not acceptable, and one of the amazing things about Torah and about the learning Torah and about what you see in the process of acquiring Torah, we look at special people, what we should, I think, probably we all sense it to some degree. When you think of the sort of the giants in the secular world of different intellectual arenas, who are the ones we respect? The ones who are the greatest intellectual giants. The ones with the highest IQ, who have mastered the greatest level of material, right? Who, I don't know which philosopher it was, I should know, but was a great philosopher. What was a famous story where one of the disciples followed him home and was shocked by what he saw? And he says, here you're preaching all your beautiful philosophy all day about morality, about ethics, and about uplifting behavior, and look at what you're doing. And he saw him in some despicable, incredibly debased activity. And he was shocked, to which the philosopher, the famous quote that says, do what I say, don't do what I do.
Was it Socrates?
Yeah, could be. It was either Aristotle, I don't want to say the wrong one. It might have been Aristotle, but it was one of the great ones. And, and I heard once what he was, but I haven't gone to the source of exactly to know what it was that the disciples saw. But the message is very profound. In the secular world, it's do what I say, don't do what I do. It's about my intellectual ability to master a particular area. You have your historians, you have your mathematicians, but a greatness in math doesn't speak to the greatness of your morality. I mean, they're two separate things. And if you're going to hear a professor speak about quantum physics, you don't really care about what he's doing or she's doing at night. I mean, it's irrelevant. They're two things that are completely disparate. When it comes to Torah, they are not disparate at all. If you tell me you went to to a lecture of a great Talmudic scholar and told me that, and then you followed him home and you saw him doing something really despicable, and he's basically a immoral person, I would say it's impossible. Well, then you can't have and you couldn't have heard a lecture from a Talmudic scholar, because if the two things are separate, they're not happening. It's just you can't find Torah where you don't find that commitment of passion and of focus, and that's why it's very interesting in this week's parsha, B'chukosai, we read it on Shabbos morning. The Torah says something very amazing. In B'chukosai telechu. So if you want blessing, if you want things to go well, the Torah is very clear. If you look at Rashi right there in the beginning of the parsha, if you are amel b'Torah, you need amels. B'chukosai telechu. You have to walk with it. You have to sort of breathe it and sleep it and eat it. And Torah is part of your life. That's what it's not sort of compartmentalized. I'm a wonderful individual, and I'm also an observant Jew, and sort of, there's no such thing. It's the totality of your being, that you are a God-fearing person who follows the mitzvos, who does what they need to do. And therefore, if you are immersed in it and you toil in it, then all good things will come. And with tremendous blessing that the Torah tells us will hit the Jewish people will be blessed with. If, on the other hand, you don't toil, you're not immersed, you're not passionate, you're not motivated, it's not going to go. The blessing of Torah, the ability for somebody to incorporate Torah into their own lives and to amass a great depth of knowledge of Torah, it only comes when you have the whole package. Pure intellectualism is not going to work. It just doesn't happen. You can have a lot of PhDs and you can have a lot of, absolute geniuses who can study Torah, but they will never be true Talmidei Chachamim, true Talmudic scholars, unless they have the entire immersion and package that we're going to be talking about. And one of those things is a passion. They say about the famous Steipler Gaon. He was one of the great rabbis that led the Jewish people in Israel for some 30 years, 40 years. And they say when he was younger, he was learning off in a corner that in a certain yeshiva, and a rabbi was visiting the yeshiva, and he was gave him the rabbi who was a host, who was the head of the school, gave this other rabbi a tour, and showed him around, and he says, well, let me show me your superstar, show me the great people in the yeshiva. Says, this one's the biggest, has the most knowledge, and this one is the most intense in his learning, and this one knows the most material. Different. He said, but tell me who the best one is. Who's the best guy in the entire yeshiva? He said, the best guy in the entire yeshiva? For that, let me show you. Let me go to a side room. And he showed him a different person altogether. He says, I don't get it. Each one of these had tremendous intellectual prowess. Why did you show me somebody else who didn't even have any of those qualities? What makes him the best guy in yeshiva? And he says, because he was the biggest of a vakesh, which really basically means because he wants it the most. And that was the Steipler going. That young student, that 15-year-old kid who that Rosh Yeshiva pointed to and saying he's the best guy in Yeshiva because he understood there was a certain quality. And, you do have that sometimes in certain other endeavors, but it's very special, it's very unique and very rare. But in Torah, it's necessary. In Torah, we have to want it. It's not something that we can sort of sit back and, learning Torah in a lounge chair, relaxing, whatever, sort of that image in Lithuania back in the early 1900s when things were tough for Orthodox Jews, and there were a lot of Jews who became secular and moved away from Torah. And the notion that somebody can actually open up a Gemara on a Shabbos afternoon, light up a cigar, and go back on his lounge chair and learn Torah, it was not an unthinkable scene. That could actually happen, as unthinkable as it seems to us. That actually took place in places like Lithuania where the Enlightenment movement was rampant. And you can find that, but like I said, that person will never be able to really become great in Torah, because Torah requires a different level of relationship with Torah. So the Yisum Refidim, they had to leave in order to receive the Torah. You can't be lackadaisical. You can't be in Refidimville, so to speak. You can't be in a place where you're just sort of going through the motions and there's no clarity, there's no focus, there's no understanding of what I'm really doing. I'm just sort of existing. Couldn't happen. We would never have received the Torah if that was our mindset. I'll give you one other point on this concept. When we finish, I don't know if you girls ever had the chance to be at a siyum, where there was a culmination of finishing a book or a Gemara, Talmud, a Talmudic tractate. But and truth of the matter is, if you can make a siyum on your own. If you finish a particular sefer and you're done, you can make a siyum. It's a party. It's a beautiful event. And when you finish a tractate, there's a whole bunch of different statements and paragraphs that you say. It's a wonderful, beautiful, joyous event. And you say a very interesting paragraph. And this paragraph contrasts our world to the secular world. And we say the words, Anu amelim v'hem amelim. Anu amelim u'makablim schar, v'hem amelim v'eina makablim schar. So what does that mean? It says, we toil and they toil. We toil and we get reward, but they toil and they don't get reward. So the Chavetz Chaim says, what does that mean? We toil, maybe we toil in different things, but they toil, they don't get reward? I'm not sure who the biggest star right now in movies is. I don't know if it's Tom Cruise still, or maybe he's already, passé. But right, I think you can get 40 million a movie, right? What's the big one, the Marvel thing? I don't know. The top star on that probably got 40 million for each motion picture. They toil and they don't get reward. Tiger Woods didn't sign a big contract, and Michael Jordan didn't make millions of dollars when he was, shooting baskets for the Chicago Bulls. And LeBron James doesn't have big contracts, and we don't have Bezos and Bill Gates with billions and billions. What do you mean they toil? They don't get reward. Okay, maybe they get a different reward. Our reward is spiritual reward in the next world, and their reward is physical. But how could we say we toil and they toil? We toil and we get reward, and they toil and they don't get reward. That was the Chavetz Chaim's question. Doesn't make sense. That's an incredible answer. Okay, let's just take the sports analogy. I guess some of you probably are sports fans, right? You probably know the NBA Finals are starting Thursday nights. You probably know a little bit of basketball. What?
Raptors.
Yeah, Raptors and Golden State. Yeah. So, you're a Raptors fan?
No, but I'm Canadian. I'm a Spurs fan.
Okay, good. So am I. I grew up in New York. That's the way I am. Okay, I can't get rid of it. But so picture, Kevin Durant. He's the best player for Golden State. He makes a lot of money. Makes millions and millions of dollars. Does he make dollars for the toil, or does he make dollars for the results? The Chavetz Chaim says the words are very, very succinct in that paragraph. In the secular world, you get rewarded for results. Okay, if you make a great drink, but nobody buys it, and you can put effort, you can work a whole lifetime, you can really have the best drink in the world, but you're not going to get rewarded if people don't buy it. So it's not the effort that you put in that matters. It's the results of whether or not Tiger Woods is going to hit the putt and get it into the cup, or if he's going to always miss, he's not going to be Tiger Woods anymore. And he pretty much isn't anymore, but whatever. It is what it is. So the point is, it's the net result. Bill Gates is not a wealthy man because he tried hard. He's a wealthy man because everyone bought into Microsoft and bought his products. It's results that count. Now, maybe you needed effort too. I'm not saying you don't need effort as well. But at the end of the day, there are plenty of people putting a lot of effort and they don't make it. Because in the secular world, results matter. Effort is a nice prerequisite, but it doesn't give you the results that you're looking for. And it will not give you the schar. They don't get reward for their effort, they get reward for the results. That's the world, the outside world. Our world, God looks and says, I don't want results from you. Because at the end of the day, I supply the results. I will tell you whether you're going to be the billionaire or not. You think you can control it? You know how many people may be just as smart as Bill Gates are sitting there doing nothing right now, and they're struggling to make a dollar, and they might be just as talented. HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed Bill Gates with this special quality. That's the way it is. But when it comes to the spiritual world Torah, it's vayisum refidim. You got to walk away from the lackadaisical attitude, because if you put in the effort, that's all you need. I will bless your efforts. I will give you a reward for the effort that you put in. Even if you don't get great results, if you just give it all you have, you're the biggest mavakesh, there will be a lot of results at the end. You will get tremendous benefit at the end as well. But the schar, the reward, is on what you can bring to the table. And that's unique in the spiritual world. That's only true in God's world, where he can say, does it matter to me? And this is something very, very important. You have some people who are geniuses. They know everything on the shelf. They can tell you all the books on the shelf by heart, all the Gemaras they can tell you by heart. Other people, you know what? They try hard. They know a few Mishnayos. They know some Chumash. They try very hard. In God's world, we don't know who's greater. That person trying very hard, who might just maybe can plow through a little bit of shemos and just barely make it, versus somebody who's some raving genius who knows every. In God's world, the fellow who's working or the lady who's working real hard, she might be more beloved to God because look at the effort she put in. That's what counts in the spiritual world, and that's the message that we have to learn from Vayisra Refidim. They left the weakness of sort of taking it by rote, sort of going through the motions, and they developed an intensity and a readiness to give it everything they've got. When you put in the effort, it's going to be blessed. So that's component number one. That's what we have to remember as we get ready for Shavuos, to try to sort of recreate that kind of passion in our relationship with God, in our learning of Torah, in our mitzvos. No, put your hand up. Oh, you did? No. Okay, and if we do that, we'll have completed the first third of what the Orach Chaim says is a prerequisite, and we know that we will be incredibly blessed and rewarded for the efforts that we put in.
I just wanted to say one thing to the women here, because God willing, one day they'll have Jewish homes of their own, and they'll be the center of those Jewish homes, and much of their own kedusha and their own avodas Hashem, their own service to Hashem, will be not necessarily through learning Torah, but more for the acts of service that they do for their family, for their husband. And this is such an important point to keep in mind, because sometimes it feels a little bit not so spiritual and not so lofty to be cooking a whole Shabbos meal or whatever. It just feels like a lot of logistics all rolled into one, shopping and cooking and cutting and peeling and all that. But to keep in mind that it's the effort that Hashem values so much, and that's a woman's amelus, so to speak. That's the effort she puts into her family will be so beloved by Hashem, even if the result, even if like the result doesn't feel so spiritual, but it's all that effort that went into providing for her home.
Right.
So I just want to, that resonated very much when
I hear.
Rabbi Stolberg was talking. I was like, oh, I get it. Now I see why I'm so valuable.
Well, you should have seen it before, but okay. Very well said. And maybe once you're on that point, let me just expand on one step further. And if for sometimes, and I know women sort of think sometimes, well, it's my husband's business. And, we definitely, as a man, I can tell you that there's the wife's attitude about our responsibilities makes a very big difference. And what I mean to say is that in terms of a man's responsibility, in terms of his learning, and when you have a husband, and sometimes it's a debate, does he go to shir? Does he stay at home? Does he do this? Does he do that? And the effort that sometimes is expended by the wife sort of giving up if the husband wants to go to a shir, but also the encouragement that a wife can give, that the husband puts in that effort, as opposed to, just take it easy, stay home, or let's say he wants to stay home and we're not willing to sort of push him out of the house, so to speak. Go to shir, your chavus is waiting for you, you love the shir, go to shir, don't worry, you'll be fine. All of that really plays a tremendous significance in creating that atmosphere in the home, and the wife is so critical in that as well, because the husband very often takes sort of the cues from the wife as to what she considers very important, and when the wife wants that sanctity and that special relationship that her husband has with Torah, it makes a very big difference to the husband as well. So all of that sort of goes into that whole amelus of giving up, of really being passionate about what's really important, and it leads to only bracha in a person's life. Point number 2. So vayavo midbar Sinai vayachnu b'midbar. So they came to the desert of Sinai and they encamped in the midbar. Now that word midbar is an interesting word. Again, these are words that you read them in the desert. Shkoyach, they're in the desert. Fine. What's the big deal? Says the Orach Chaim, that word midbar. If you look through the sages' perspective of spirituality, that word b'midbar takes on a very special meaning. And the Gemara, there are many, many different statements by our sages that say that if a person wants to acquire Torah, you first have to be a midbar. What does it mean, be a midbar? How do you be a desert? So the word midbar has a very specific connotation. A midbar is empty. It's not flashy. There's no glitz and glamour. Now we think of Vegas in a desert, but before Vegas was built in a desert, there was just desert. Okay, then it's no longer, when you're in Vegas, you're not in the desert. A desert is not flamboyant. A desert is simple. A desert is trampled upon. It's used. It's walked upon. It is the absolute epitome of humility. When you see the word midbar in the sages, throughout Shas, throughout the entire Talmud, the connotation of that word is humility. And it's very, very clear, says the Orach Chaim, that if a person wants to sort of be ready to receive the Torah, you have to get into the mindset of being humble. And it's really, it's fascinating, because then we're living in a world where sort of self-aggrandizement, flamboyance, showing off, it's almost part of the whole mentality. I mean, that's really, when you can imagine a candidate running for the presidency and sort of saying, I'm really not sure I'm better than my adversary, my opponent. I'm really not sure. I just don't want to think. I'm going to try. I'm not smarter than anybody else. I really don't have a lot of virtues more than anybody else. But I'm just going to try. How far would that get? But when you listen to great people in our history, that's what you're going to hear. Just Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was, he knew how great he was, but he didn't demand, that a special treatment because of how great he was. Just an incredible story about his son. His son was, Reuven Feinstein was, 45, 50 years younger than him, and he was a son. And, there's a whole big discussion about smoking. I believe it was smoking during Chalamot, or smoking on the holidays. It's not really important what he was doing, but the point is that Rav Moshe gave a shir, and he said, smoking on the holidays is questionable, in terms of, because we're allowed to do certain activities on the holidays that you can't do on Shabbos. So he said he didn't like it. It's prohibited. And his son was surprised, because his son did smoke, Reuven and his son smoked and thought it was okay, and he never knew that his father said it was prohibited. So when he, after the discourse, he said, Tati, like, how come you never told me that I'm not supposed to smoke on the holidays? You've seen me smoke. And so he said incredibly, well, I thought that you went through the Gemara and you thought it was okay. And you decided, because every rabbi has technically a right, if you're on the level, you go through the whole issue, and if you decide that it's okay, then in your world it's okay. So even though he was Rav Moshe Feinstein, and he was the Gadol Hador, was the greatest man of his generation, but he was going to impose his will on his son, who he felt was a wonderful Talmid Chacham. He was a great person. He ended up being, one of the Torah leaders of our generation. He's alive and well, Baruch Hashem. He should be well. Amev Shana. But he didn't have that feeling like, hey, you know who I am? I'm Rav Moshe Feinstein. You can't talk to me that way. You can't do anything different than what I say. It just, humility is a fabric of a Talmid Chacham through and through. And Bamidbar says, that concept says that basically, if you have that humility, then you can have Torah. If you don't have that humility, you cannot have Torah. And where was the Torah given? Mount Everest, Mount McKinley, one of the highest mountains anywhere in the world. That's what you think. Flamboyance. God's opening up the heavens. You think he picked a nice hush of a mountain to be up there and befitting the moment of the day. He picks Midbar Sinai, right? Did I ever send that? Maybe I just saw pictures. I'm not sure. I think I once went. I can't even remember if I once actually went to Midbar Sinai back in my touring days of Israel. But it's a very low, simple. It's almost like a hill. Okay, there's really not much to talk about over there. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the rabbis teach us specifically, because when you're going to give Torah, it needs to be humble. It needs to be low. That's why Torah is compared to water, because water always goes to its lowest base. It always comes down based on gravity to its lowest area. That's what water is, and that's why water and midbar are two words synonymous with Torah. It's lowness, it's humility. It's not being in any way haughty to anybody else. When the Jewish people developed this quality about themselves, they came in front of Har Sinai. They came in front of God at that particular time, from the point of view of recognizing that I'm not better than anybody else. I just should appreciate that I'm here. And how do you look at somebody else and feel superior, even if you have a higher IQ? Like we said before, who's working harder? Who has more challenges? So who's to say who's better? In the world of Judaism, we do not in any way presuppose who's on a higher level than another person, because we just simply do not know the answer to that question. So from that point of view, working on character, it's something that I think is a big challenge. We get caught up, and and it's true for all people. The FFB, so to speak, the Bali Tshuva, wherever you are, you're sort of the flashier parts of Judaism are the mitzvos, are the physical actions that sort of define your commitment. You're keeping kosher. It's great. You're keeping Shabbos. Fantastic. Family purity laws. Unbelievable. The man puts on tefillin now every day. Wow. All these things, they're all great. And Chas v'Shalom, I don't for a second mean to minimize them. But, okay, now that you're becoming religious, let's start working on your anger now. You don't hear that too often. But that really should be part and parcel of what your goal and what your journey in Judaism is all about. Because as a Jew, our obligation is to work just as hard, if not harder, on our character development of who we are as a person and the physical actions that we do to fulfill the 613 commandments. And they're both non-negotiable. But the message is they're both non-negotiable. Your anger is not negotiable. Your haughtiness is not negotiable. Okay, your jealousy is not negotiable. You hate another Jew, not negotiable. That's not acceptable. God will not accept that. We, all of us, this is our big challenge, because it's so easy to sort of, you put on the suit, you got the black hat on, you got the tzitzis flying, and, it's so good, it's so easy to sort of feel like, look at me, I'm some holy guy, Where are your midos? Where's your character? Okay, you push the guy to run to kiss the Sefer Torah. You push the guy away. You elbowed some guy because you didn't want him getting to the dance floor and he wanted to dance with the chassan. Like, so you're some fancy guy. God looks at you like you're some. Look at you. Look, you're what's it called? A piece of work. You need a lot of effort to get going in your life. A lot of deficiencies in your character. And somehow we sort of don't associate that with being deficient in our Judaism. But it is. It's synonymous. We saw Salanter, I've mentioned this in this room a number of times before, that we saw Salanter in the mid-1800s, looked around, the Jewish people went through Europe and saw what was going on. And he said, I see scholars, I see people they're learning Torah all day, but the midos, the character development is not kicking in. That's not acceptable. That means you're deficient. The Torah is very, very clear. Okay, the Torah says, "V'halachta b'drachav," we have to follow God's ways. Now, it's not a physical commandment because you can't follow God's ways because you can't see God. You can't get physically close to Him. So what does it mean you follow in His ways? And the message is very clear. You have to emulate God's attributes. God is loving. God is kind. God is humble. Okay, all of the qualities that, and how do you know God is humble? Because in the very beginning of the Chumash, one of the first messages we get is that God consults with His heavenly angels and asks, should we make man? God needs angelic advice as to whether He should make man. Nasa Adam Kinusenu Kitsamenu. Do we need that? Well, God doesn't need any advice. God knows what He wants to do. But He's teaching us. I know and I still consult. I know and I still refer to other people's opinions. I don't think I know it all. And if a person doesn't consult other people, doesn't ask questions, doesn't get other people's advice, then you got a big problem. You got a major problem. So all of these character traits are things that we have to work on from day one. And therefore they should be, whether it be in most religious schools where they have to, it sort of has to be not compartmentalized, it has to be incorporated into the curriculum. They're trying. They are trying. There's no question a lot of schools are trying to bring it, but just very, very hard because we tend to gravitate towards the more, tangible things that we do. These are not, the midos are not so tangible. It's so hard to really develop yourself in that way, but let's not kid ourselves. One of the prerequisites was humility. You got to be humble, and that teaches us that character traits are part and parcel of the Torah.
Is that because you just can't test on it? You can't standardize it?
It's one of the reasons. Also, it's real grunt work. It's hard stuff. It's hard stuff to work on yourself. It's hard stuff to say, I'm going to make not being jealous my focus for this year. That's going to be the midah, the character trait that I need to work on because it bothers me that other people have something and I don't have it and it bothers me. And why does it bother me? If I believe in God and God is giving everybody what they need, what does it bother me for? It's so illogical, but it's so sometimes part of our being, and it's so unacceptable for us to have those feelings. So it's you're right. It's very hard to discern. It's very hard to sort of measure. That's one thing. Each person's got a different challenge, so it's not quantifiable in that regard. And it's also, it's way, way easier to sort of, I don't eat that. I don't drink that. I've adopted a new stringency in my kashrus, and that's a lot easier thing to do. And you say, okay, but have you spoken Lashon Hara in the last month? Have you spoken bad about another Jew? You get angry sometimes and you lose it, which is completely unacceptable. Those are tougher things to deal with, and that's why I think for some reason it sort of always gets sort of pushed as a second level issue in amongst the Jewish people, and it doesn't belong there. It belongs right on the front lines.
Oh, I was just listening to a share this week, and I was also reading something else about it the other week. It said something about how it's easier to keep 613 commandments and to do all the Torah and everything than it is to find somebody who's actually good at has good midas.
Yeah. Okay.
Meaning there was a question the rabbi asked the class. He was like, and I actually thought he was going to go the other way. I wasn't expecting this. I actually was thinking that the whole time. But that's just my own thing. But he asked the class. He was like, "What's better, somebody who's a really good person but isn't keeping Torah, or somebody who's keeping Torah but has really bad midas?" And he said I was expecting him to say the Torah thing because logically,
Right.
like they're like, oh well, how do you know it's a good person to the Torah? But like if we're speaking of like morals as far as Torah is concerned, just they're not religious. Like supposedly it's better.
Right. Okay. Well, that's it's a profound question. I hear where he's going, and I hear what he's trying to say. Not sure I fully agree. It depends. Whatever. It's a big complicated
I think it makes a lot of
concept.
sense. Like if you see if a religious person sees a woman struggling and like falling on the ground and like doesn't help her because he's rushing off to pray, like somebody who helps and isn't religious, I think is a better person.
Okay.
But
I mean,
but
again,
you can have good middles and still not be Jewish.
There's a
Cannot be.
good person and not Jewish aren't on the same equation.
Well, this is what the question is. But
well, okay. Again, let's not get off into that. It's a profound question with a lot of subtleties involved. But certainly, I'll agree this much. If you have the good midos, everything else will come so much easier than the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, so when Eliezer went to look for a shidduch for Yitzchak, and he saw Rivka, he didn't check how long her skirt was. Okay, right? He did not check if she davened a 20-minute Shmon Esrei, and went like this in an airport for 20 minutes. She then
He didn't look into her yichus though.
was definitely not look into her yichus, right? Didn't look at into her family lineage. He looked for one thing. He looked for midos. He looked for a girl with incredible empathy, incredible energy to help, a love of chesed, and he said that girl is going to be an amazing girl. So on that level, I hear you, but it really can get a lot more complicated. But I appreciate the point. It's a great point.
I understand it can get complicated.
Right. So, one last thing. We just got. I really have to go in 3 minutes. I'm sorry. One last point. Vayichan Shem Yisrael neged Ahar. I'm just going to try to give you two quick stories because Vayichan Shem Yisrael neged Ahar means they encamped as one. Vayichan does not say Vayachanu. Vayachanu means they encamped. Vayichan means he encamped. Rashi says Ki'ish echad b'leiv echad, like one man with one heart. They became unified, and that unity is what allowed them to ultimately receive the Torah. They had the passion, the focus, the determination, the intensity. They had the humility. That was a second prerequisite. And then they had achdus. They had unity. They had a sense of purpose, a sense of connection to one another, of understanding and appreciation of how it's really all about ourselves as one people. And maybe just, one incredible story about, I don't know if you might have read this or heard this before, but the head of Starbucks, I know he's running for president, isn't he? I think he's one of the guys running for president.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, what's his name? Remember his name? Schwartz? Not Schwartz. Schultz, maybe?
Oh, sorry.
Schultz,
I'm
I think it's
sorry.
Schultz.
Oh,
But
sorry,
then-
I'm just ignoring you. Yeah, isn't it?
Schultz or something, right?
Schultz, sorry, not Schwartz.
Yeah, right. I think it was Schultz. Anyway, you can look it up and read it yourself, but it's an incredible story where he was he went with a number of other CEOs, billionaire hotshots on a trip to Israel, and on that trip, one of the stops was at a great rabbi's house, and they went to Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Mir Yeshiva. At that time, about 6,000 students that he headed. A man ravaged with Parkinson's, could barely put a sentence together without literally wrestling with all of his frailties and challenges. An incredible person. Yet he led the yeshiva to incredible heights, and all the CEOs are sitting around a table. Rav Nosson Tzvi walks in. I'll get right to the point. And he looks around the table and he says, "I have a question for you, gentlemen." And they all felt so shriveled up. He is this genius of a man, a spiritual giant. And yes, they were CEOs, but somehow compared to him, they just felt very, very small. And I have a question for all of you. And they all started getting, so he's writing this very well written op-ed piece. We're talking about how he was hoping, oh please, don't ask me. I don't want to be put on the spot. But he says, what lesson do we learn from the Holocaust? What's the lesson we learn from the Holocaust? And so he looks at one guy, and it wasn't Schultz, and he says, what do you say? It's like, never again. Never again. Well, okay, he says, but no, that's not what we learned from the Holocaust. It's not what we learned. So he went somebody else, so bottom line is they all pretty much said, Rabbi, teach us. What's the message of the Holocaust? The message of the Holocaust, he said to those fancy CEOs sitting around the table, that when the Nazis, Yamach Shemam, let the Jews out of those cattle cars into the horrors of the concentration camps and labor camps, they counted 6 Jews and gave a blanket. They counted 6 Jews and gave a blanket. There was 1 blanket for every 6 Jews. The message of the Holocaust is that even though they were in such despair, in such horror, in such abject, just unbelievably torturous conditions, those Jews in the Holocaust took that blanket and threw it over the other 5 Jews. And they shared that blanket. And they did not keep the blanket for themselves. That's who we are. And he said, you people were given your blanket, now go and share it in your communities. And it was an incredibly profound moment in time. And they were very moved by it, and I'm sure it made a great impact about how they have shared their blanket in their communities and throughout their country. But the concept is that the greatest Torah, it's a very interesting kind of connection, because the Gemara does tell us that the greatest level of Torah was learned in the generation where there was such poverty that 6 people covered themselves with 1 blanket. It happened 2,000 years earlier, but isn't it interesting? 6 people in 1 blanket. The same metaphor, the same kind of example that was used is what Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel used in describing the uniqueness of the Jews. That's who we are. And the third prerequisite, and the third thing that we need to focus in on, and we can't do this on a global level at 1 minute, we just have to do it in our communities, in our families, in our relationships, to develop unity, to develop a sense of concern for every Jew, to have a sense that even though we might be different, but we are ultimately way more the same than we are different, and therefore we've got to get together. We've got to love each other. We've got to respect each other. That was the message. So if we can sort of take these 3 points and sort of use it as a sort of the foundational principles of getting ready for Shavuos, and certainly taking the essence of Shavuos throughout the rest of the year, the idea of the passion that we have for doing mitzvahs and for learning Torah, the humility that we have to have in our relationships, and of course the midos we have to develop along with the humility, and the unity in Klal Yisrael, the love for one another, and the deep concern we have to have for one another. Be'ez Hashem, not only will it be a formula for our success in getting ready for this great holiday, but it will be the formula for Be'ez Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu granting the ultimate wish of Klal Yisrael, which is redemption, the bringing of Mashiach Meher Yameinu. Brought here. Pleasure.